This is Ritson and you're watching Sport Icons.
Right, so where to start with this fight? Ritson versus Jeremias Ponce. Of course, this was the main event here in my city of Newcastle at the Eagles Arena. Now, we always knew that this was going to be a bit of a barn burner, and that's exactly what it was. And I think a lot of people may put this down as one of the fights of the year, as in for pure warrior, gladiator style fight. Pretty much toe-to-toe kind of stuff at times. But for me, the biggest point for Ritson, of course, I know Lewis, and he's one of the nicest people I've ever met. He's very, very pleasant and everything. But in that ring, he loves to fight. He loves to fight. And the thing is with Lewis is that he's got an amazing jab. He really does. But that seemed to not really be there tonight. And I understand why. Ponce, of course, he's got the... it looked like a reach in that advantage. He looked like a very tall, very slender. And I think a lot of people... Listen, they're going to give Ritson a lot of stick for this fight tonight. I think undeservedly, I might add. And I'm not saying that like just because I know him, but undeservedly because I think Ponce, while people may not know him that well, he's a world-class fighter. You could see he's a world-class fighter. You can see that he can take good shots. You can see that he's got a fantastic engine and his output is phenomenal. And Ritson... Well, okay, let's start off with like a round number one. So round number one, literally from the opening bell, it was a case of Ritson, Ponce met right in the middle and just started slugging it out. And that's how it was for the entire fight. But I suppose the biggest turning point was that Ponce managed to land a big body shot. Now, Ritson, he took it, he didn't go down or anything, but you could see right away that he got hurt. Now, firstly, that's going to give Ponce a huge lift, knowing that he can hurt Ritson. So, of course, he made it his aim to, every time that they got up close, go for the body. That's exactly what you do. So, Ponce, you have to give him all the credit in the world. But ultimately, when you get punched in the stomach, which is one of the reasons why I never liked sparring or anything like that, like back in the days, because when you get hit in the stomach and your air just leaves your body, you've got no power in your arms feel heavy, your legs are heavy, you're struggling to breathe, you can't think straight. And when you've got somebody on top of you who won't let up, what do? There's not much that you really can do, is there? There really isn't. Now, Ponce, he did use some illegal shots. He kept pushing his head into Ritson. He was hitting him on the back of the head, he hit him in the nuts and that as well. Don't get me wrong, Lewis did give him back to the balls on a couple of occasions as well. But it was that body shot. That, for me, much like the Patera fight, that's what pretty much turned the fight. But it was a bit of a barn burner. A lot of people will look at that fight and compare it to the gladiator style fighting, and that's exactly what it was. Ritson, he's a very come-forward fighter. So him being on the back foot is not something that you see. Ritson is the kind of guy that does like to go in there and just slug it out. And that can be seen as a criticism, for sure. Don't get me wrong, he's got like the Geordie spirit, for sure. But the fact that he will take several shots to land one or two is not good for him for longevity. It really isn't. And the fact that he was doing that a lot, from some ways, I can understand why it was Lewis that was fatiguing more. Because Ponce, of course, he had the momentum. He had the confidence that he was hurting Lewis. He had the confidence that he was winning the rounds. So, therefore, the energy wasn't being sapped out of Ritson. It wasn't being sapped out of Ponce, because when you're confident, when you feel that you're doing the job, when you feel that you're doing great work in the ring, you have that upbeat lift and you're relaxed. When you're relaxed, you use less energy. Ritson, of course, he's having to tuck in his elbows into the midriff in case like another body shot and that comes through, because obviously Ponce was targeting that one. Of course, as his elbows come down, the headshots and that are coming as well. So Lewis took a hell of a lot of shots, and he's going to be absolutely devastated today, because it was pretty much, I don't say one-way traffic. I mean, for me, it was like I gave Ritson like a 3 of those rounds, arguably 4 if I was being really generous. Maybe I'm being a little bit biased for that one for sure, but I think that Ponce is a world-class fighter. So while people probably will give Ritson stick, I think that you have to give him credit as well, the fact that he took an enormous amount of punishment. He had no quit in him. None whatsoever. And in round number 10, this is a 12-round fight, so only 3 rounds left. Of course, he does get hit by another shot, a body shot, and of course he goes down. His dad, Dave, throws in the towel. Lewis protests about it. Of course he would, he's a warrior. But the referee ignored the towel. In fact, the referee picked up the towel and threw it over the rope. When your corner's there to save you. As much as fighters don't like it, of course, Lewis will know, and whatever else, that with the towel coming in and the referee stopping the fight because the towel came in, it will be a case of, yes, people will go online and say how the towel came in and he quit and blah, 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 even though Lewis quite clearly didn't. But ultimately, the referee should not have picked up that towel to throw it over. Dave knows his fighter. Dave knows his son. Now, did he throw it out of compassion? Of course he threw it out of compassion. But Dave, he's been around boxing long enough to know that Lewis didn't have the energy. Lewis needed a knockout. He didn't have the energy to be able to knock out Jeremias Ponce, especially when Ponce isn't letting up. And the fact that Lewis took a little bit more punishment and had to go down twice more in round number 10 because he just had no energy, he had no wind left in him, proved that the referee, how dare you pick up the towel and throw it out? It's not the referee's job to say, okay, yes, I agree with the corner throwing in the towel, or no, I don't. That's not the referee's job. The referee has to respect the corner's wishes. The corner's wishes said that's enough. As much as Lewis was protesting, of course he was, he's a warrior. But Dave knows his fighter, he knows his own son. Throwing in the towel was the right thing to do. It was the right thing to do. I mean, Lewis won't like that at all. I understand that, but it was the right thing to do. But the referee should not have thrown the towel out of the ring. Even away from the corner team. It's not like he threw it back at the corner team. He threw it on the other side as well. Anyway, listen, I mean, Lewis, he's an absolute warrior. And yes, he will learn from it. But certain things he does need. Well, I mean, there are certain things that he needs. I think that Dave, I think that maybe he should bring in another coach to like work with him. Lewis, of course, he wants to stay up here in the northeast. He's not like he's going to go travelling down south or wherever else. In fact, one of the reasons why he left Neil Fannin recently is because of the distance of Hartlepool. Hartlepool, yes, it's in part. It is part of the northeast, but of course, it is quite a dog march to get there. It really is, and it's out in the sticks. And to Hartlepool is a good 40 minutes drive. It's very, very far. But the fact is that, so not fact, but in my opinion, I think that he should bring in like a Nick Gitters or a Mark Lazell, someone like that, just to help with the pads and help with things like that. Tactics, I think that Dave Ritson, his tactics may well have been right, but because I think that maybe they were relying on Ponce just punching himself out, which is why I think Dave was saying to him, weather the storm. And it was a right thing for him to say, because under normal circumstances, that's what you do. You ride the storm, and as the fight goes down the stretch, as long as you're not taking too much punishment yourself, as long as you're taking the shots in your arms on the gloves, eventually your opponent will tire himself out. But Ponce, quite clearly, he can punch like that and fight like that all night. Okay, so for me, I think that Lewis, of course, he's going to be absolutely devastated, and I feel bad for him. I feel terrible for him. I really do. He is the poster boy for us here in the northeast, but I think that Lewis Ritson, he's going to be gutted about this one, absolutely. But Ponce, he's a world-class fighter. You can see he's a world-class fighter. It's not like a Lewis Ritson just got exposed by a nobody just because maybe you don't know who Ponce is, much like with Francesco Patera and that as well. You may not have heard of him. It don't mean that they're no good. It really don't. And he's a very strong, very powerful, very aggressive Argentinian. And Lewis Ritson took so much punishment. I mean, how many fighters do you know would have taken that shot in round number 1 and lasted as long as what they did under that kind of constant pressure? Anyway, listen, I'm babbling on a bit. Of course, I'm very upset for Lewis. I'm sure, you know, he'll go back to the drawing board. He'll assess things. Dave will assess things. Phil Jeffries, Jaffa, he'll assess things, MTK and whatever else. And we'll have to wait and see what happens, because for me, I don't want to see like a Lewis stop. I mean, he's, what, 27 years old. There's no reason for him to be stopping right now. I know a lot of people, fight fans, are very, very brutal, and they say, oh, Lewis Asset should quit now. He's been exposed and blah, blah, blah. It ain't like that. His 2 losses were against very, very good fighters, Francisco Patera and Jeremias Ponce. Very, very good fighters. Okay. Anyway, listen, that's my thoughts on it all. Of course, you drop me yours, click thumbs up, and of course, subscribe, and I'll catch you all in the next video.